Did we have we had more people registered though, right?
Quite a
Maybe there.
few more, but they'll come in, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. I am Amy Angelo. I am the program manager for the main chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And tonight, Anne Romney is going to be presenting one of our education programs for you. We have several education programs that you could find on our website, alz.org/main. And they are pre-recorded, some of them. And we also, if you like our Facebook page, always post when we're having an event like this. We'll put it out there as an event. So if you're interested in some of the other programs that we have, which Anne's going to talk a little bit more about, you could check them out there. So welcome Anne Romney, who's a
Yeah.
longtime volunteer with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amy, and thank you, Brittany, for hosting this program. I do some of the names here seem familiar from a prior program that we did probably a month ago or so. So welcome to back to those that I have met before, and glad that you've all able to join us today. So as Amy said, we have a lot of programs through the Alzheimer's Association, and this particular one that we're looking at today, Understanding and Responding to Dementia-Related Behaviors, is one that takes a deeper dive beyond just looking at what is Alzheimer's, what is dementia, but really looking at some of the practical challenges and aspects of living with a person who has Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia, and how can we understand some of these very challenging behaviors, and what are some of the triggers that cause some of these behaviors. And our challenge is to figure out how to connect and still try to have a positive interaction with the people that we're living with or caring for. So I'm going to begin, and I'm going to share my screen, and I'll need someone to, Amy or someone give me a thumbs up that you can see or tell me you can see the presentation. Yes, good. Thank you, Brittany. Sometimes what I see is not what people on the screen see. So we've learned all kinds of wild things that can happen with Zoom. So I'm going to be talking through this PowerPoint presentation. I'm very happy to entertain your questions. It's a bit challenging for me to be looking at the chat while I'm sharing my screen, but I think Amy is here and able to look at the chat, and we can be informal. We're a small group. So if we have a question that's pertinent to a particular place where I am in the presentation, absolutely just speak up and either raise your virtual hand or say, excuse me, I have a question, and I think we can easily accommodate that. And of course, when we're completed, I will stop sharing and take other questions that people have. And in addition to questions, we love to invite people to share some experiences that they're having and things that have worked for them, because people often learn a lot from each other in these types of programs. So I'm going to jump right in. We're going to start out and talk about what the particular objectives of this program. We want you to be able to identify common triggers for the behaviors associated with dementia. We have a little process. There's a little model that we're going to go through with a little vignettes, stories that we're going to use to apply to this model. So explain this process or model for assessing and identifying some of these challenging behaviors, and then give you some strategies to address some of the more common dementia-related behaviors. So we talk about triggers because indeed there appear to be some, and some of them are pretty straightforward and clear as to how or why they would cause somebody to have a challenging behavior. And sometimes we have to become a little bit more like detectives to try to figure out what might be going on. So we have, again, this model, this process for how you would assess a situation. So if you look at the first on the top left corner there, pain or discomfort, this is always a place where we want to start. Is there some physical thing happening? Is there something that is causing a person to be agitated, to be uncomfortable, to be unhappy? So we always want to begin and eliminate any physical cause. And of course, sometimes as the dementia advances, somebody may not be able to express what that physical pain is. So we have to look for signs and try to understand if that's happening. Then in the middle, we're talking about overstimulation or boredom. Either, both could be something that's at play, that's causing some agitation or discomfort. Fear or frustration. I think it's very easy to understand how people who are experiencing cognitive decline can have both of those emotions in a big way, to be fearful of not really understanding what's happening, of what's going on with their cognitive functioning, frustration when they can't remember different things or do things that they're used to being able to do. So we know that that can be a trigger. Change of environment, unfamiliar surroundings also can be very unsettling and can cause some of these behaviors. And then a complicated task, and it may be a task that never used to be complicated, but has become complicated, and that of course can lead to some of these frustrations as well. So this is the little model that we're going to be revisiting over and again as we go through these different vignette scenarios to look at some of these different behaviors. The first thing that we always need to do is detect what might be happening and connect. That real importance of connection, always such an important piece of whatever we're doing, connecting with empathy, trying to understand what might be happening. And then we begin with that physical issue. Is there something happening on the physical level that we can address? And there may be more than one thing happening. There could be a physical thing happening as well as an environmental kind of situation happening, or something that's been upsetting to the individual. We then really need to look, once we've eliminated any kind of physical or addressed a physical issue, what might be happening on the emotional level that could be causing some of these behaviors. And then we want to try to reassess and see what we can learn. Maybe there are better times of the day for certain things, and plan for the next time. I do feel like I need to, at this point in the program, always have a little bit of an asterisk, which is, as much as we may want to be able to apply going forward, sometimes what works on a given day may not work on the next try. And so I think it's just important to be transparent about that we want to learn, and we wish it was that simple that we could say, oh, okay, then we should never have the radio on at the same time someone's talking. But it may not be the answer always, and things keep changing, things keep evolving. So our challenge is always to try to reconnect and establish some form of de-escalation. So let's start to talk about these step by step. Detecting and connecting. You may or may not be familiar with this concept of joining a person in his or her reality by trying to see the world through his or her eyes. So this is, in the relative scheme of things, a newer way of looking at how it is effective to interact with somebody who has Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. Years ago, we may have said we should try to reground them in reality and correct them, and always have that sort of righting the ship kind of thing. And now we really, experts that understand this, feel that it's really more important to try to be in their world, validate how they may be feeling, and trying to make them feel safe and comfortable. So an example of this that I use time and again is an example where somebody may be saying they're upset and they want to see their mom. And you may know that their mom passed away many years ago and that that's not possible. The corrective thing would be to say that, to say it's impossible, we can't see your mom because don't you remember your mom passed away 20 years ago? Being in their world would mean you would say, I really am missing your mom too. Let's talk about our favorite memories of your mom, or let's look at pictures of your mom and try to address the emotional need, which is the missing of the mom, as opposed to kind of coming down hard with that reality. So that's an example of that. And then in terms of understanding the reality, before you intervene, who are they concerned with? What, where, what's happening? What are they thinking? What's going on? What might have happened right before this behavior that you're exhibiting? What's happening right now while it's happening? And just try to understand the context if you can. And then approaching the person calmly and respectfully. We know that this can be challenging. We know that sometimes we get frustrated ourselves and we can be impatient. Somebody may be repeating something, and that this can be very challenging. But this is what we aspire to, is this idea that we can try to remain calm and respectful throughout. So now we'll talk about these, go through the steps, addressing the physical needs first. There may be a medical issue. There may be something not in terms of medical condition, but just simply hunger or thirst, or that lack of social interaction. So there's a feeling of loneliness or disconnectedness. And there may be environmental triggers. It could be that the room is too cold, the room is too hot, there's too much noise, something that can be addressed on a concrete kind of physical level. Once we've addressed or eliminated that type of concern, that's when we really need to look in deeper and figure out what might be happening on an emotional level. We want to, again, focus on the feelings. So for my missing my mom example, the feeling is one of longing and loneliness or missing someone. The fact that that person is not here to be seen is really not going to help address that feeling. The more you know about that person's preferences, what they enjoy, don't enjoy, and different kinds of, is this a person who tends to want to have an extra layer on and be nice and warm? Whatever you can make that person feel comfortable with, that would be an important part to play. And then that idea of redirecting and moving whatever that energy is that's happening into something more soothing, more calming. Maybe it's getting outside and going for a walk or listening to some music, something that will break the pattern that they may be entrenched in at any given moment. We are throughout the program, we have a few different vignettes or little videos, and these are not actors, these are people speaking from their own experience.
She was part of the family, you know, she'd fold towels, and she'd fold towels all day long some days. Just, you know, put them back in the basket, and then she'd give them to her, here's some more towels. And it may sound like it's cruel, but look, it kept her busy. It kept her movements going. It kept her, you know, just kept her occupied, and it made her feel wanted and that she was contributing. We created a routine for her that worked for her around her agitation and, you know, her sleep patterns. So every day she was in the same routine for the most part. And every day she did something. She was always in the kitchen every day helping do something. Sometimes she'd rinse dishes, but she was always near the kitchen sink because she spent most of her life in front of the kitchen sink. Now she was just doing it in different ways. And yeah, going for a walk, going out in the car for a drive, walking around the yard, you know, watering plants. Those are all things that she did, and we just had her continue doing them.
Right, so simple ways of keeping her mom engaged, feeling like she's doing something in a familiar kind of environment, that being, in this case, the kitchen. So once we have some successes in terms of addressing some of these challenging behaviors, it's really important to try to figure out what we can learn, what works best. That routine that's been referenced, that's usually a very helpful component, is having a routine to each day that follows a pattern and things that work well within that pattern. Then we want to go back to detecting and connecting for the next time. Again, joining the person's reality, what went well, what did not go so well, and how can you adjust going forward. So there are a variety of behaviors that we're going to go through, a few different types of behaviors that are some of the more common behaviors that we encounter. And again, this is the model that we will use: detect and connect, addressing physical needs first, emotional needs, reassessing, and planning for the next time. And I'm going to begin by reading you, if we were in person, you would all have a little booklet with these little scenarios, but I will be reading those to you. This woman's name happens to be Anne, and one of the behaviors that Anne demonstrates is anxiety and agitation. And this is a not uncommon type of behavior, and this can manifest itself through restlessness, pacing, distress, over-reliance on caregivers, a sort of neediness. And I'm going to read you our first scenario. Anne is a 75-year-old woman with Alzheimer's disease, and she was pacing the hallways in her house in the evenings saying, quote, "I need to go, I need to go." She would not stop walking, even for meals. Her family would give her sandwiches to eat while she was walking. Though she used a cane, she was getting blisters on her feet and had lost weight from not eating. Her family would ask Anne to sit down, but as soon as she sat down, she would immediately get up and start pacing again. Anne had worked for 40 years as a nurse on the night shift, and her agitation began every evening. Her shoes were worn, and she appeared to be in pain as she walked. So, if we take a look at this model and we think about specifically this scenario with Anne, one of the things we can begin to see right away is that her feet are sore. She has blisters on her feet. That is a physical manifestation of this behavior. And that's something that we can, once we have detected this and connected with Anne in some kind of a soothing and direct manner, we can get her to sit down and apply some band-aids and do whatever we need to do to get her feet so that there's not the physical distress. Then if we look at emotional needs, well, Anne is used to throughout her life at this particular time of day when she tends to get up and talk about needing to go, was when she would go to work for her night shift. So we want to be able to try to engage her. Perhaps we ask her questions about work and have her tell us some things about the people that she liked at work, or the things that were the most challenging for her, or the things she enjoyed most. So address that need that she has to connect with this work that she did for 40 years. And then we might want to reassess and plan. So maybe the better time for Anne to have a meal is earlier in the day, her main meal, not at the time of day when she would typically be leaving to go to work prior to her dementia. So that is one way that we can try to apply this to the behavior around sort of anxiety and agitation. That is something we often see. So we just talked about that. The next one, behavior that we're going to talk about is confusion or suspicion. This can manifest itself through not recognizing familiar people, places, or things. Sometimes people will accuse other people of stealing because they've put something somewhere and they have no idea where it is, so they believe someone must have taken it. People can accuse people of infidelity and all kinds of things that can be very hurtful to be on the receiving end of course. So I'm going to read to you another scenario that involves Anne and this particular type of behavior. When Anne's family comes to visit and evening begins, she becomes very suspicious that people are trying to get into her house and are watching her through the big picture windows. She becomes suspicious of her family for not making the people, quote, go away, and that they all must, quote, be in cahoots with each other. Well, it is important to acknowledge that sometimes people with dementia will hallucinate and will imagine that there are things happening, and that could include people that they think are there outside the door or wherever. So some of this may be something that is actually happening in terms of a hallucination. But what we want to do in terms of this confusion or suspicious is, again, detect and connect. Make sure that Anne knows, reinforce that everybody there is there because they care about her and want to be there with her and want to make her feel safe. So reassurance, such an important thing. There may be some physical issues going on. We need to make sure that that isn't happening always. We can never assume. Then addressing the emotional needs, of course, that again has to do with reassuring the person that there is nothing to be afraid of. You don't have to say there's nobody here. What you want to do is validate that they may be thinking that there are people here, and reassure that anyone that is here is someone who has good intention and cares about her, and that they will make sure that you will make sure that no harm comes to her. And then reassess if there's something you can learn from the situation. Maybe there's a different room to be in that's not with big picture windows at a particular time of day, but always that sense of where can we be and what can we do that will minimize this confusion or suspicion, the behaviors in this case. Aggressive behavior is also something that we need to talk about. It may be verbal, it can be, not usually, but it can be elevated to a physical level. It may occur suddenly for no apparent reason, or it may emerge following a trigger. A lot of people will often say, well, thank goodness my loved one never gets aggressive or angry. I never have to worry about that. And unfortunately, you don't have to worry about that until the time that it happens. So we have to be aware. Some of this education is just naming what some of these behaviors are so that you're prepared, and not just taken completely by surprise if something were to happen. So you have a backup plan and you kind of know what to do if somebody is exhibiting aggressive behavior, because your own safety and theirs and your own safety and well-being are in the balance in terms of that. So I'm going to read you again another scenario that involves Anne and aggressive behavior. Anne's husband, Bill, is standing in the back of the room, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, watching television. Anne walks in and tells him sharply, "You aren't the boss here." Bill ignores the comment and continues to watch television. Anne comes closer, raises her voice, and says, "You can't tell me what to do." When Bill doesn't respond, Anne comes up to Bill and hits him on the arm with her balled fist. Prior to her dementia symptoms, Anne was quite calm by nature and would never have exhibited this behavior. Lately, her outbursts are becoming more frequent. She continues to come at Bill, who retreats from her and locks himself in the bathroom to avoid further conflict. He does not have a cell phone with him, and since both have been avid hunters when they were younger, there are guns in the house, but Bill has removed all the ammunition. Well, this one is always so loaded. When I shared this particular scenario, there's just so much to really unpack here. We'll start with Bill standing there with his back against the wall and his arms folded. When Anne comes in, she's obviously feeling agitated and aggressive, and he doesn't respond to her. When she first says something to him, "You aren't the boss here," he doesn't respond. So she's not feeling heard or seen. She's obviously upset, and he's basically pulled back because he's frustrated and probably frightened in his own way about what to do. And he gives her no reassurance that he's heard or seen what she's saying. So she escalates and she gets more and more agitated to the degree that she ends up actually physically punching him, to which he then retreats, which is a natural thing to do. I actually know someone. I have this scenario actually exists in a life where I know a man whose wife has dementia, and he actually did go put himself in a bathroom at one point in time. So Bill retreats into the bathroom. He's now in the bathroom without any way of calling for help or reaching out to a neighbor or another family member. So he's kind of gotten himself stuck into this situation. Then the mention of guns. Well, we have a program called Safety and Memory where we talk about these sorts of things. It's really important that there not be guns in a home where someone has dementia. That would be right on the top of the list of things you do not want to have. So if we use this model, Bill and my sympathy is with him. But he is not doing a good job of detecting and connecting what's happening. So he's retreating. He's obviously feeling pretty burned out by all of this, and he's not helping the situation. A lot is being demanded of him to do that. So it's not an easy thing for him to do, but he's not detecting what's going on. He's not getting a good read, and he's not making her feel heard or listened to. There may be something physical happening. We don't know that, but he needs to try to find that out. And he's not addressing the emotional needs at all. He's basically shutting down. So in terms of reassessment, he would have to really think about how can he, even in light of the aggressive behavior, how can he reach out to her with kindness or a hug or something that's going to make her feel calm and diffuse this aggressive situation that he finds himself dealing with. Let me go back to my slides. So in terms of aggressive behavior, usually these types of behaviors in dementia they are upsetting but not typically dangerous. That isn't to say that they could not become dangerous. So it is always important to have a backup plan and some way that you can reach out for help if something were to escalate. But the person could also be a danger to themselves and others, and safety measures are necessary. So again, guns need to not be in the home. We need to make sure that things are, that anything that could be used as a weapon of any sort needs to be in a place where people can't access them. You need to speak with the person's doctor. There are anti-anxiety medications. There are things that can help a person who's exhibiting a lot of these behaviors, agitation, aggression, etc., can help to calm somebody down. And it is important to be able to call 911 if and when there's something urgently needed, or a neighbor next door, somewhere, somehow to be able to reach out for help, not get yourself locked into a room with no way of communicating outside of that room. That's not good for you or the person that you're living with. We're going to talk now about repetition. Well, repetition is one of the hallmark aspects to Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. It's one of the first things we think about when we think of someone that has dementia, the repetition of saying the same thing over, certain behaviors over and over again, repeating words, repeating questions, repeating behaviors. This is something that can be very taxing to be around, and it sort of requires the best of us in terms of how we respond. So I'll read you a little scenario. Anne has recently been concerned about an upcoming visit from her daughter. Though her daughter Katie is not scheduled to visit for another 2 weeks, Anne has begun to repeatedly ask her husband Bill, when will she arrive? Anne asks several times throughout the day, every day, which has begun to wear on Bill. He finds himself answering impatiently or even ignoring Anne's questions. At the same time, Anne is going into the bathroom much more frequently than she ever has before, every 10 to 20 minutes. So we're going to listen to Sam for a moment, then we're going to go through our model.
Repetition is really one of the most common and also frustrating behaviors for caregivers. It's important to really just take a minute, take a breath, and really think about how you could help that person with the answer that they're looking for. It really makes no sense to sort of bump heads with them and try to correct them or try to tell them to stop asking it, because they really can't remember that they just asked you that a minute ago. So thinking about how you could provide an answer that's reassuring, even though you might be doing it over and over and over again.
So it's that reassurance. So if we take, in this particular scenario, well, the detecting and connecting, that's becoming quite a problem for Bill and Anne, because Bill needs a little respite here. He needs a little support. I would encourage Bill to be on one of our support groups. He really needs to be talking to somebody else and being able to vent some of the frustration and pain that he's experiencing, so that he can then connect a little bit more kindly with Anne, because her situation is not going away. In terms of the physical needs, we have a flag here. All of a sudden, Anne is frequently visiting the bathroom. She may have a urinary tract infection. She may have something that is contributing to that new behavior. So we want to make sure that that's something that we address. Maybe she needs to get to the doctor soon to get a test and get on some antibiotic or something to figure out why this new behavior is happening. So we have a clue that there's something physical happening here. In terms of the emotional address, Anne is really missing her daughter, and she's sort of obsessing about when is she going to see Katie. And now we have these wonderful virtual ways of connecting. We've always had the telephone, but we now can actually even get on a FaceTime or a Zoom and see Katie and have her be there and be present and connect. So that's a pretty easy one to actually address. It's no longer something challenging that's outside of what we can do. So let's do it. Let's embrace this technology and try, in this case, to satisfy that emotional need that she has to see and be in touch with Katie. That could help diffuse this repetition of when am I going to see her, when is she going to come? And then reassessing and planning for the next time. One of the things that occurs to me when I listen to this scenario is that maybe we don't say that Katie is coming for a visit several days or a week or whatever before, but we wait and share that information when it's imminent or when you can get on a phone or a Zoom. Because part of it is that she's built up an anticipation and she's wanting it and anticipating it, and so she keeps referring to it. So the repetition one is always a challenge, and you can say to somebody, stop repeating, you've already said that, and they will say, well, I didn't just already say that. So again, it becomes the work that you as an individual has to do. And one of the messages that we always want to convey in all of our programs is that this is hard as a caregiver, and it's something you should get support with, whether you're a support group type of person or whether you just need to read or talk to other people. On our website, we have a blog where people can share the things they're going through with some ideas of things that work for them. But it's just really not, you need family support or neighbor support, clergy support, whatever it is. It's just not something people can really go through all on their own. And I would say that Bill it seems like he's not getting the kind of support that he would benefit from. So we will talk about wandering. Wandering, 60% of people with dementia will wander, and it can happen at any stage. So it's not a matter of early, middle, late stage. And also, sometimes people say, oh, I'm so glad I don't have to worry because my loved one never wanders. And again, just like they're never aggressive, that's true until the day they do wander. So important, again, to be anticipating that this is a possibility, having tools and a plan to deal with wandering. So I'm going to read, again, a scenario. Ann and Bill spent the early years of their marriage in New Jersey. They moved out of state to their current home 30 years ago. Ann constantly asks to visit New Jersey. She frequently leaves the home in the morning while Bill is showering and states, I'm going to New Jersey. She has been found by neighbors on many occasions at their church, on neighborhood streets, and one time at a very busy intersection near their home. Their daughter, Katie, is quite worried about potential injury. Bill is also worried and is at a loss about what to do. Bill is logical and tries to explain to Ann the reasons they cannot visit New Jersey, though he recognizes that this approach is not working. This approach also tends to make Ann more angry, and the wandering incidents increase at those times. So again, we have a situation. This detecting and connecting. It is not uncommon for people to remember the things further back. So she's remembering, in a sense, she wants to go home because the home that she's feeling that she's missing and thinking about is a home from 30 years ago. And what might work is to try to validate that she misses where they used to live and talk about where they used to live and maybe recall their neighbors and sort of engage around that place. There was my father had Alzheimer's disease and he was in a long-term care facility, and on my way out, almost every time I would leave, this woman would come up to me who was a resident patient there, and she would say, can you please take me to the train station? When people start to talk about, obviously I could not, when people start to talk about traveling like that, and when Ann says, I'm going to go to New Jersey, that is a big warning flag that this person is at risk for wandering, because they've got their mindset on going somewhere. We can't ignore those kinds of things. We need to pay attention to those things. Of course, you would again assess any kind of physical concern or need. And then again, that emotional need, that longing to be somewhere, missing someplace, and maybe you have picture albums of times when you lived there, or you can remember what fun it was when you redid the kitchen in that house, or anything that will connect you to that place that she is longing for, and then reassess and figure out what might be the thing that brings that up or what might trigger that. But be on alert for those kinds of signs for wandering. I'm going to go back and talk about wandering just for a moment in terms of resources that you have. There are now lots of different technology kinds of things. You can reach out to our helpline, and they can hook. There are bracelets that people can wear. There are GPS kinds of things. It's very important to not make that assumption that that won't happen. It's also a very good idea to let your neighbors know that you have a loved one living in the home who has cognitive decline, has a form of dementia, and if you should see them out walking, try to please bring them back or call you and so that you can bring them back. Also, if you live in a community where you feel like you can let your police department know that you have a loved one with dementia, that can also be good. When more people know and are aware, they can help recover that person home safely. But we do have these technological ways in which we can track where a person is. You also want to make sure that we can put locks at a different height on the door and don't leave car keys around or things that somebody would go off and use when they no longer should. So it is really something to be aware of as one of these challenging behaviors, and a very terrifying one when somebody takes off. We just don't know what can happen and how they can be returned. Some states have that silver alert, which is a sort of high-tech electronic communication, sort of like the Amber Alert for when a child goes missing. There's a silver alert, and depending on where you live, that may be something that you can also take advantage of if someone were to go wander. The Alzheimer's Association, we always go over all of the resources in our programs on our website, alzheimers.org. We have all these different ways in which you can connect. Our Safety Center and Alzheimer's Dementia and Caregiver Center for things for you to get support. We list what our support groups are and our education programs. There's ALZ Connected, which is what I was talking about in terms of people connecting and blogging and talking about different things that they're experiencing and where can they get help, and people can communicate together. Community resource finders, and our navigator, which helps you figure out where, if you need legal kind of help or medical help or different kinds of housing options, etc. We have a wonderful helpline 24/7. These are social workers and skilled folks on the end of the line that can talk you through an emergent situation that's happening at the moment, or something much more further down the road of where can I get an elder care lawyer or a particular type of support group or education kind of question. So you can call, or you can go on our website and explore around on your own. And as Amy said at the beginning, we have many education programs like this that are pre-recorded that people can watch on their own time, and you can send those along to other people. So if you have family members or others that aren't able to attend some of these live programs, you can always refer them to those resources on our website. And I am going to stop sharing. And this is some time that we have if people have particular situations that they themselves have experienced, or questions, or things they would like to talk about. We are here to address them. I don't see anything in the chat. You can write something in the chat, or we can, you could just speak up and ask a question or comment. And there is a handout, Amy, right, that I think Brittany has, that people will get, which I usually like to say at the beginning so people aren't trying to take notes, but I didn't say that, so I apologize for that.
Yes, Brittany is going to email it out to everybody. Yeah, but does anybody have any questions? You could just take yourself off mute. Or anything to share, an experience that you'd like to share. This is Anne. Could you address sundowning and how that plays into agitation and anxiety?
Yeah, so, that is something that seems to be pretty well established, that there are different times of day, and it's not true for everyone, but there does seem to be something about the end of the day when people tend to get more agitated, and some of these behaviors seem to be more prevalent at that time of day. And one of the things you can try to do around sundowning is to find the kinds of things that are soothing. We know that music, and we have our program Effective Communication, we know that music is a very powerful connector, can be very calming kind of activity. So maybe that's the time of day when you you take some music and you try to have them engaged in that way. Maybe that's the time of day you go out for a walk when the weather is nice, and you try to bring some fresh air and try to distract and try to navigate around that behavior. For people for whom it's a really significant problem, again, there are some medications that people can take that can help to manage some of that increased agitation that we see around that time of day. You have to see what works. Any other questions or comments, things that people have experienced?
And I'll share, so for those on the call, I took care of my father. He lived with me, and he did experience sundowning. And for the 10 months when I didn't work and I just had the opportunity to kind of be with him, I would observe, his behaviors, and I would detect and do that whole thing. And I didn't even know that that was a thing prior, right? But, then going through this program, I learned that that's exactly what I was doing. And I could try, different things in the environment, and sometimes it would help and sometimes it wouldn't. But when I saw that, like, we were at the point of no return, then he would get the little white pill that would calm him down. And sometimes he would take a nap at that hour and then get up for dinner. It usually was around like 3 or 4 o'clock, and then he would get up for dinner afterwards and he'd be refreshed. It was like a new
Sometimes it is
man.
fatigue.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's another question here.
There's another comment in here. Yeah, it's difficult, from Holly. It's difficult to take things away from them that they don't want to go away. Any suggestions on how to do that? For example, checkbook, vehicle. Huge questions. Really important, significant questions. Driving is often one of the early battles. We certainly had that battle with my dad in a big way. And I hear this, way more often it's a battle than it's someone hands over their keys. So we're often confronted with this, and this is a serious issue because for obvious reasons. It's not just that person who might get lost or get in an accident, but they could hurt somebody else. So it's a public health issue as well as an individual issue and concern. And what we try to encourage people to do is, when you take things away, have something you're giving back, that there's an alternative method for whatever that is. So in the case of driving, what is driving? It's independence. It's getting to different things that a person still wants to engage in, whether it's getting to their haircut or their lunch with their buddies or whatever it might be. So rather than just we're taking away your car, you can't drive any longer, we don't think you should drive any longer. It's not safe, but we have a driver, or your friend Joe is going to always pick you up to take you to your lunch date on Thursdays, or whatever it is that we can't just take away. We have to also have a backup plan. And so we really encourage that. There does come a time where driving is just not okay at all. And you have to not just tell the person not to drive, you have to remove the keys. And there's a whole thing. Sometimes you can take a test through the local motor vehicle department, and that will to determine the person should not be driving. But even then, you can't assume that they won't drive. So you really have to, that one is a big, big challenge. Sometimes you can appeal to their sense of safety for others, and sometimes that doesn't compute. So it's a big one. The checkbook is another. Finances are something that really get mucky fairly early on, and a person can no longer really handle their finances properly. It's one of the early signs, in fact, where people are no longer paying their bills on time or making change in a restaurant. They're really not equipped to really handle money. So we encourage, now we have lots of ways that people can do online bill paying for people, even if you're not living with them. There are lots of different ways in which you can take care of the business, but we need to, we suggest that people allow a person to have some amount of money, not a lot of money, but some amount of money, so that they have money to walk down and buy a cold drink at the corner store, or, you know, they can feel like they have some control and some autonomy. But in terms of an account, we need to make sure there's, you know, no more than just a couple of $100s or something at max. We have one of our programs has a scenario where someone falls victim to a scam. There are a lot of scam people out there that will prey on older folks, and particularly people who have dementia, and people can get scammed out of a lot of money. So it's really important that you not have large sums of money in a checking account or on a credit card and all of that. Maybe just a little bit of money, so they have that autonomy. It's a good question, big question. You're welcome, Holly. Anybody else have a thought or a question? It's all very challenging to be living with. If you're here, then you've got a situation that is not easy. And we just can't encourage you enough to, you know, reach out, get information, get support, get a break, find ways to not be doing all that 24/7 lifting on your own. Really, really important. So I don't know that we have another I know we've done a few programs.
This is the last one.
The last of this series, and I'm sure in the future we'll have the opportunity, I hope, to do more. But you can always go again on our website and find other programs that address other components of all of this, and just so much material. I like to say that the website just gets better and better all the time, which I think it does. So there's lots of information out there for you and for you to pass along to other people, and maybe in your family or friends that you know that might be going through some of this as well. So thank you all for coming, and you know, wishing you the best with whatever challenges you're dealing with right now. And thank you, Brittany. Thanks for having us.
Thank you,
Yes.
Brittany.
Thank you both so much. And for those who did attend, I just want to let you know that once we close out of the Zoom, a survey will automatically pop up. And I just kindly ask that you take a moment and fill that out. It will obviously provide feedback to Anne, who did a wonderful job, but it will also help us, help me plan future classes at Redington-Fairview. So I just ask that you take a couple minutes to do that. And if you have any questions after this class, please reach out and I will do my best to get an answer for you from Anne or Amy. But thank you both again for being here, and thank you to those who attended.
Thanks
Thank you
so much. Take care, everyone.
Good night.